Across this century so far, we have seen innovations and explorations in sci-fi cinema that continue to surprise us, with creators predicting the trajectory of society and film technology, allowing the realization of stupendous, out-of-this-world spectacles. So now, at the quarter of a century mark, yikes, I know, it seems high time to identify the essential sci-fi films that we've seen so far. I'm Josh from Whatculture, and these are the essential sci-fi films you need to watch. First up, Edge of Tomorrow. Although the film has gone on to become known as Live, Die, Repeat in some quarters due to its confusing marketing material, those of us there at the beginning remember Doug Liman's Edge of Tomorrow not for the size of the text on its posters, but for the way it took its big budget and big stars and made something genuinely interesting that deserves its life beyond the standard blockbuster release cycle. Here, Tom Cruise is Major William Cage, a coward who serves as a handy poster boy for the United Defense Force, a planetary military tasked with expelling the alien mimics that are vying for global domination. Abruptly thrown into combat alongside Sergeant Rhea Vrataski, William finds himself face to face with the aliens in an unexpected offensive, and a close call with an Alpha grants him its powers, namely the ability to loop back in time when it dies. Handy. Or it would be if he could get anyone to listen to his warnings about the impending attack. A high-tech sci-fi Groundhog Day with all of the stylized action of a Marvel movie and none of the obligatory tie-ins, cameos, or kowtowing to a bigger universe, Liman's film adapts Christopher McQuarrie's screenplay into something that feels big studio, but remixes just enough of the familiar elements to keep things fresh. Speaking of, next up we have Predestination. Ethan Hawke has made a name for himself across pretty much all genres this century, and while he may be better known for his indie dramas with the likes of Richard Linklater, he slots neatly into pretty much anything, including the excellent and underseen Predestination. This flick sends Hawke's unnamed US Temporal Bureau agent back in time to prevent the Fizzle Bomber attacks. But the wibbly-wobbly timey-wimeys soon set in, and things go topsy-turvy. The film uses the agent's changing appearance, a prerequisite of being a clandestine operative, the inherently splayed nature of his actions across time, and his gradually disassembling psyche to bring him face to face with something like fate. And fate comes in the form of Sarah Snook's puzzle box of a character. Adapted from the short story All You Zombies, Predestination is an Oedipal meditation on the dire consequences of time travel. It drives its narrative along the single timeline theory and admirably, if unsettlingly, refuses to let things pull themselves up by their bootstraps. And again, speaking of time, next up we have the Timekeepers of Eternity. Sculpted from the charred remains of Tom Holland's, not that one, middling 1995 miniseries The Langoliers, itself based on Stephen King's novella, Timekeepers of Eternity boards us on a red-eye flight from LA to Boston, on which most of the passengers and crew suddenly go missing. Timekeepers' ragtag band of survivors land the plane and go out in search of answers while battling the strange and obsessive Mr. Toomey, who is determined to get to his meeting on time. Reworked in a grainy Xerox black and white style, the filmmakers take one small but significant element from the original series. That antagonist Mr. Toomey obsessively tears strips of paper to remain in control of his invisible childhood monsters, and then just runs with it. As such, paper animations dominate the film, tearing, crumpling, and adding new details. The editing and animation provide fresh meaning to scenes, remixing characters' actions and expressions, breaking through into surreal sequences that reflect their inner turmoil and conflicts, and even intercutting footage from elsewhere, past, present, and new renderings, to expand and create alternative meanings from the original material. And there really isn't another film like it, sci-fi or otherwise. Next up, District 9. The film that launched director Neil Blomkamp's career, District 9 takes us to the slums of Johannesburg, where a group of sick and malnourished illegal aliens are penned up in an interminate camp. These extraterrestrials are bona fide insectoid aliens from outer space, known derogatively by the locals as prawns. After the government hires defense contractor Multinational United to relocate the aliens outside of the city, dozy MNU bureaucrat Vikas finds himself leading the relocation. Hit in the face by a special fuel that the peaceful aliens have been developing though, he begins mutating into a prawn, bringing him literally face to face with the reality of their subjugation. This is an alien invasion movie in which the aliens are not just the good guys, but are subjected to precisely the kinds of cruelties that are all too present in our real world. Though extremely on the nose, as you might be able to tell from this description with its cultural commentary, it's still a relevant and impactful film, and as such, District 9 has slotted into the canon of being a modern sci-fi classic. Next up, Annihilation. Alex Garland is a name that creeps up time and time again in 21st century sci-fi filmmaking, and don't worry, he's going to crop up a lot on this list. Hell, he arguably rivals Christopher Nolan and Denis Villeneuve for the sheer presence in this genre. While not enjoying the same success critically or commercially as those two though, Garland has nonetheless steadily chugged away, writing and helming many important sci-fi films across the last 25 years, not least his sophomore directorial effort, Annihilation. Adapted from Jeff Vandermeer's novel, Annihilation takes a virtually all-female cast into the heart of an alien invasion event. Following the arrival of a meteor containing a mysterious alien substance, an anomalous zone known as the Shimmer emerges, into which teams of troops and scientists enter, with few of whom end up returning. Cellular biologist and former soldier Lena ventures into the ever-expanding zone with an expedition team in a last-ditched attempt to save her Shimmer-sick husband Kane, and hopefully, ultimately, find a way to stop it expanding before it's too late. Once inside, however, things don't quite go as expected, and after cutting the team off from the outside world and pitting them against its many mutations, the Shimmer begins to distort and transform them on a genetic level. All in all, Annihilation is an unsettling piece of sci-fi cinema that pairs hallucinogenic visuals, horror imagery, and hints of larger ideas about personhood, and challenges us to think bigger than the average alien invasion movie. Time for something a little different next though, with Safety Not Guaranteed. Aubrey Plaza has always been something of an indie darling, playing supporting and character-driven roles in the likes of Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, Damsels in Distress, and what we're talking about today, Safety Not Guaranteed. Directed by Colin Trevorrow in his feature film debut, Safety stars Plaza as Darius Britt, a disillusioned college graduate whose internship at Seattle Magazine takes her farther than she imagined. When staff writer Jeff Schwenson investigates a classified ad seeking individuals to go back in time, he takes Darius along for the ride, and they're drawn into the world of Kenneth Calloway, a grocery store clerk whose mission is to return to 2001 and prevent the tragic accident that killed his girlfriend. Although the film is set up as a quirky comedy in which the dopey lost male lead is shown the way out of the fantasy world that he's created, this is not really how things progress, because that time machine Kenneth has been working on actually works. Safety Not Guaranteed's various twists leave us wondering what the truth of the whole thing is, especially after the late-in-the-day time machine reveal casts doubt on everything that has been established before. And this is the genius of it. Low budget, no frills, and with a plot that leaves you thinking about it long after the credits. Next up, Prey. Like most sci-fi horror franchises, the Predator series has had its ups and downs over the years, and let's face it, mostly downs. Yet Dan Trachtenberg's Prey has managed to rejuvenate the franchise, taking it away from the tired narratives of previous entries and trying something new. That's because in this installment we're transported back to 1719, before any of the other film's events, and introduced to the franchise's first female lead, Naru, a young Comanche warrior and native inhabitant of North America's Great Plains. Seeking to become a great and respected hunter, Naru takes a series of risks that brings her into conflict with the feral predator, a savage version of the monster that we all know and love, which wields primitive weaponry, at least by predator standards anyway. The new setting, new characters, and new villain all make Prey an enduring success, foregoing the complex plots, intricate technology, and mad escapades that we usually associate with the sci-fi genre. What we get instead is a down-to-earth outing that expertly balances tension, excitement, and some all-timer kills. Next up, we have High Life. With High Life, Claire Denis launches Arpat, Juliette Binoche, and Mia Goth into space for a squirmingly uncomfortable time. Putting a disjointed narrative to use against the backdrop of cold space, cold light, and cold people, what begins in the realm of the credible soon descends into the kind of art house insanity that you might expect from this director. Pattinson himself plays a criminal astronaut aboard a square ship sent by humanity on a doomed mission to seek an alternative energy source for the planet from the edge of a black hole. So far, so Interstellar. But the crew he shares his space with each have their own agenda, controlled by the scheming Dr. Dibbs, who leads experiments on them with the intention of achieving artificial insemination in space. It's sexual, but not sexy, and lit or filtered with every colour on the spectrum, but never colourful. And there is violence from beginning to end, as, contrary to Kubrick's thesis in 2001, mankind seems to shrink within itself and devolve back to apes the further it journeys into space. Next up, a bit of an obscure one, it's The Jacket. With a cast list boasting Adrian Brody, Keira Knightley, Daniel Craig, Chris Christopherson, and Jennifer Jason Leigh, you might be wondering how you've never seen John Maybury's The Jacket. Well, despite its star power, it didn't go far either at the box office or with critics, and has been lost down the back of the couch ever since. But no more. In this film, we join John Starks, a Gulf War veteran who returns to the States in 1992 after surviving a bullet wound to the head and suffering from bouts of amnesia for his troubles. But he gets into a spot of bother while hitchhiking and wakes up to find himself next to a dead cop with no memory of what on earth happened. Thus, Jack is tried and locked in a psychiatric institution, where he's then injected with drugs, bound in a straitjacket, and locked in a morgue drawer as a form of experimental treatment. While in the jacket though, he travels 15 years into the future and finds the woman he loves, using their bond to investigate what on earth has happened to him over the past little while. Like 12 Monkeys, but on a far smaller and more personal scale, The Jacket expertly navigates the tropes of the psychological thriller while finding time for a genuinely affecting romance. Yes, the sci-fi element is a vehicle for the film's other interests, but isn't that what good genre material is all about? Next up, Brian and Charles. In 2022, Jim Archer's lovable sci-fi comedy Brian and Charles finally brought David Earl and Chris Hayward's fictional comedy duo to the big screen, and it delivered on all fronts. Set in rural Wales, the film focuses on ragged inventor Brian Gittins, who lives a lonely and somewhat reclusive life making madcap machines that usually fail spectacularly. But after finding a mannequin head and an old washing machine, he clobbers together an AI robot that actually works for once. The rickety, lumbering robot's name is Charles, and he wants nothing more than to get out the house, explore his surroundings, and ultimately jet off to Honolulu. Relying fully on Earl and Hayward's well-drawn characters to propel it forward. All in all, Brian and Charles is hilarious, heartwarming, and shows that you don't need something fancy to make a decent sci-fi flick. However, being fancy sometimes doesn't hurt, and that brings us to our next movie, The Martian. Now, just because it's called science fiction doesn't mean that it has to be implausible or unrealistic, as Ridley Scott proves with The Martian. This castaway in space leaves Matt Damon's Mark Watney behind on Mars and forces him to use his skills as a scientist to survive. And watching a man become increasingly emaciated while growing crops from excrement might not sound like a high point for sci-fi cinema, but The Martian manages to be, with Drew Goddard on script duties injecting humour into every other beat, while Ridley Scott himself keeps the scenes tight and engaging, and the DP and a crack team of CG animators give us the best looking Mars we've ever seen. Never has a cast been as unnecessarily large as The Martians either, with Sean Bean, Kate Mara, Jessica Chastain, Sebastian Stan, Benedict Wong, Chiwetel Ejiofor, Jeff Daniels, and Donald Glover all putting in an appearance. But give Ridley Scott a budget and he will use every penny of it. And even better, it manages to work. The science is painstakingly realistic and elaborate, at times feeling like an advert for NASA itself. But the expansive cast of characters on Earth and on the ship that leaves Mark behind keep things ticking nicely through to a well-earned conclusion. Next up, Under the Skin. Jonathan Glazer never puts his name to anything that he doesn't believe has creative, artistic, or social worth. And while he's recently been off courting major international awards and audiences to boot with the grimly tense Nazi drama The Zone of Interest, we look to one of his quieter and more unsung pieces for this list, Under the Skin. Glazer's art house sci-fi ignores much of the plot of the original book and instead takes us for a ride along around Scotland with Scarlett Johansson's unnamed alien. She prowls the streets and the coasts in mute silence, searching for non-actor male victims to take back to her lair where, for reasons that are never really explained, they are literally gutted into an otherworldly, abyssal dimension. These science fiction elements provide a jarring contrast to the broadly realist and, at times, documentarian style of the film, but the two disparate aesthetics do unite in Johansson's portrayal of her character. This is an alien on the edge of humanity, figuratively and literally, struggling with identity and understanding what she really is or where she belongs. As sci-fi movies go, it doesn't get much more profound than this. And for something completely different, next we have Avatar. Avatar, the film that not only revived 3D, but launched a whole new branch of mocap 3D CG technology, wowing audiences globally and giving director James Cameron the highest grossing film of all time, for the second time. In it, we are, of course, taken to Pandora, a world rich in fauna, flora, and blue tribal aliens known as the Na'vi, where human industrial interests threaten the very stability of the planet. Paraplegic former Marine Jake Sully gets kitted out with a remote human Na'vi hybrid avatar, which allows him to survive the planet's poisonous atmosphere, get his legs back, and gain the trust of the Na'vi, reporting back then to a team of scientists. There are only two things that he didn't count on though. One, him falling for a Na'vi native, and the destruction that humanity is willing to undertake in the name of profit. Avatar is pure spectacle, built to demonstrate the full capabilities of the digital technology that Cameron had been championing for the past couple of decades. And even 16 years on, it's still one of the best looking science fiction movies of all time. Something it has in common with the next movie, Gravity. It's hard to overstate just how important Alfonso Cuarón's Gravity was when it released in 2013. An incredible double-header from George Clooney and Sandra Bullock, who star as two astronauts suspended just outside Earth's atmosphere, attempting to survive an unforeseen disaster and fashion a way to get back down to the surface. Gravity remains a blockbuster spectacle over a decade after its initial release. With some of the most stomach-churning depictions of space hazards ever put to screen, this thriller does a lot with a little. There's no extraterrestrial shenanigans, just two people facing off against space's cold indifference. Despite this though, visually, Gravity is a true marvel, a titan of sci-fi photography and scale. Even on the small screen at home, the canvas looks as gargantuan as it should be, with kinetic, vibrant cinematography and editing keeping the pulse pumping. Other movies have tried to imitate its style, and as a result, Gravity's offerings today might not appear all that unique, but few have been able to pull it off as effortlessly as this. Alright, next up is a definite weird one because we're talking about Southland Tales. While Donnie Darko is about as beloved as 21st century sci-fi comes, director Richard Kelly's second feature, Southland Tales, shares none of its acclaim. A deeply divisive and equally misunderstood film, Southland Tales offers a cautionary glimpse into an alternate present, now past, that keeps getting more relevant by the day. The year, if you can believe it, is 2008, and the Republican Party is enjoying unprecedented success and control in the US, and citizens' rights and liberties have been corroded via the extension of the Patriot Act and the introduction of the US IDENT, an agency dedicated to monitoring the country's citizens and streets 24/7, opposed primarily by a group of neo-Marxist revolutionaries. Dwayne Johnson, of all people, finds himself at the center of an almighty shoot-storm as amnesiac right-wing action star and influencer boxer Santaros. And his affair with porn star turned talk show host Krista Now is only the tip of a conspiracy that runs from Hollywood to the White House. Throw in a generator of inexhaustible energy that threatens the stability of Earth's natural ocean currents, plus some holes in space and time for good measure, and you've got one of the most ambitious science fiction films of the last 2.5 decades. Southland Tales, needless to say, is epic, it looks magnificent, and the plot is as layered as one might expect from Kelly. And the 2021 recovered Cannes cut is distinct enough from the original that even those who hated it the first time around are guaranteed to find something interesting with this new version. Next up, Paprika. Continuing the obsession with dreams and reality that director Satoshi Kon first put to screen in 1997's Perfect Blue, Paprika offers us ambitious concepts and the visuals to match as an anime feature that outstrips its stablemates on the sheer scope and scale of its plot and animation. After a prototype device intended to aid psychiatric treatment, which allows the user to view, share, and influence others' dreams, is stolen, Dr. Atsuko Shiba, a scientist who moonlights as a dream detective under the codename Paprika, best job in the entire world by the way, is then thrown into a nightmarish world. Tracking a dream terrorist across the landscape of the city's dreams, Paprika must stop a manic parade of dream objects before it breaks through into reality and shatters the delicate balance between the two different states. When it comes to anime, a style that is already comfortable with the surreal and absurd, this dream focus just gives license to make something as mesmerizing and uncanny as Paprika. Hands down one of the best animated science fiction features of all time. Alright, let's get silly. Next up, we have Rubber. Despite not garnering much of an audience on release, Rubber has stood the test of time as an indie darling and a yardstick for weeding out those who can't take the daftest concepts that film has to offer. The film itself shows us Robert, a sentient tire with telekinetic abilities who embarks on a killing spree out in the Californian desert, enacting his vengeance against those who have wronged him and his kind. But when Robert encounters a woman who his powers don't work on, he develops a rapid onset obsession that threatens to lead to his own demise. Lieutenant Chad, who is at the same time character, narrator to an in-film audience and narrator for the film itself, purports that the movie is working from a point of view of nihilism, claiming to be telling a story with no larger meaning and purpose that is not but an homage to No Reason. But to take him at his word is to fall into the trap, because Rubber is in fact a biting critique of Hollywood excess, built in the vein of funny games, but with the satisfying thrills and spills that keep us coming back to it time and time again. Next up, Aniara. Based on Harry Martinson's epic poem of the same name, Aniara is what might have happened if all of High Life's budget had been poured into the material aspects of its production rather than its big name stars. This Swedish language film focuses on a woman referred to only by an abbreviation of her job title, MR, who boards a large, luxurious spaceship for a 3-week journey from a dying Earth to a colonized Mars. Just 1 week into the voyage though, space debris damages the ship and drives it off course, leaving it without fuel and drifting into open space for weeks and then months and then years, with hopes of rescue being few and far between. While it could have been a platform for shenanigans and tomfoolery, Aniara spurns humor and irreverence, instead using its doomed voyage to show stages of societal breakdown and reformation, mirroring the themes of the original poem, in which science and poetry collide, leaving so many questions. The filmmakers also sidestepped the obvious class critique by choosing to focus less on hierarchies of wealth and influence and more on the shifting psycho-social dynamics of the passengers. As their journey progresses, they lose hope and they try desperately to seek some form of salvation. Next up, Looper. When we think of Bruce Willis, we often picture that New York cop in the grotty vest with the machine gun, but the action star has made a hell of a name for himself in sci-fi across his 4 decades on screen. Among his best films in the genre are familiar titles like The Fifth Element, 12 Monkeys, Unbreakable, Surrogates, and of course, Looper. Looper punts us into 2074, where crime syndicates send the people they want to disappear back in time to be slain by contract killers in the past. Willis stars opposite Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Joel, an assassin from the future who has seen too much and been around too long, and so is sent back in time to be killed by, of all people, his younger self. What the crime bosses don't reckon on, however, is Joel's capacity for self-preservation, even when facing against himself. And far from a fixed loop, this version of time travel allows for things that happen in the past to actively modify the future, meaning Joel really can rewrite his history. It's a smart and pacey film from writer-director Rian Johnson, whose sci-fi career was sadly cut short following the backlash to his next film, The Last Jedi. Looper ignores many of the established rules of time travel flicks and manages to get the best out of a late-career Willis and a barely recognizable Gordon-Levitt. Next up, War of the Worlds 2005. Steven Spielberg's War of the Worlds is maybe a contentious pick for this list, and while yes, it might have left something to be desired in terms of fully adapting the source material's epic story and giving us well-rounded, memorable characters to root for, it undeniably set the bar for modern science fiction visuals and tone. The script might not be the full package, but the world Spielberg crafts absolutely is, grounding this classic story in the present with the same great and realistic photography that he brought to Saving Private Ryan. Arguably one of the first true post-9/11 blockbusters, the extraterrestrial invasion hits close to home with the tripods' devastating power on full effect, rocking the central family, led by an admirable performance from Tom Cruise, and leaving Earth's population totally shell-shocked. It's moody, it's bleak, and after years of increasingly silly disaster movies, it was a reminder that the genre, and sci-fi generally, can show us some of our worst fears depicted on the big screen with haunting realism. As such, while you can, of course, argue as to which adaptation tells the best story, when you think of War of the Worlds and when you think science fiction, the image of Tom Cruise covered in human dust running from the tripods is sure to be at the front of your mind. And next up, I didn't wear this for no reason, we have The Substance. In the late 20th century, mainstream body horror was the realm of David Cronenberg, with little room or appetite for new talent. But this century, a gap in the market opened up and several new directors saw fit to fill it. One such director is Coralie Faja, who first dabbled in elements of the genre back in 2017 with her assault revenge movie Revenge, before then plunging headfirst into the deep end with her second feature, sci-fi body horror extraordinaire, The Substance. Working in English this time around, Faja prepared a thoroughly American tale of fame and aging, highlighting Demi Moore's excellent turn as aged, fading celebrity Elizabeth Sparkle. After being fired by her producer, Elizabeth starts taking an experimental drug that promises to rejuvenate and revitalize her life by creating a second, younger version of herself, the newly minted Sue, who can go out there for a week at a time and allow Elizabeth to once again go out and live her life as a young woman. Needless to say, there are some grim side effects as Elizabeth's dependency takes hold and Sue develops some of her own ideas. It's wild, it's funny, it's stylish, it's a must-watch. And in that same vein, next up we have Sorry to Bother You. Sometimes less is more, and despite having a fraction of the budget of some of the other blockbusters on this list, Sorry to Bother You's satirical near-future setting is perhaps the most vivid. Its buildings and cities might not be unfamiliar, but this story about a broke black telesales agent called Cassius Green who finds huge success nailing sales over the phone by using his white voice to lure in customers injects just enough sci-fi twists to take its satire of modern capitalism and racial politics to ridiculous heights. Directed by Boots Riley, Sorry to Bother You is full of electric characters, incredible wit, and a cool as all hell soundtrack. But let's face it, it's the twist that takes it to the next level, and one that I would never want to spoil here. And look, I know sometimes saying there's a twist at all can be in itself a spoiler, and now you're going to watch this film expecting something to happen, but such is the effectiveness of it and the twistiness of it that I'm happy to let you know there is one in advance, because I am confident you will never guess it in a million years. That Boots Riley hasn't released another film since dropping this is criminal, as it's absolutely one of the best movies of the 2010s and one of the best modern sci-fi films you can watch. Next up is something not funny at all, because we're talking about Melancholia. A quiet and crushing apocalypse takes place around the house and grounds of a wealthy family's estate in Melancholia, as Justine languishes in the ruins of her failed marriage in the company of her sister Claire, Claire's husband, and their son. Meanwhile, the rogue planet Melancholia enters their skies set to pass close to Earth, before either moving out of its orbit or coming back around to collide head-on and end all of humanity. The effects of the planet's proximity are mesmerizing as well, and sometimes literally electric. And thanks to the heavily aestheticized staging, lensing, and editing of many of director Lars von Trier's scenes, we can never be sure whether some of these effects are the planet's doing or the product of Justine's mental state as she declines. Over 2 hours of misery are punctuated with flurries of action as people argue, kill themselves, and take tentative steps towards insanity, all culminating in the most gorgeous end of the world ever created for the big screen. Yes, Melancholia is an extended exercise in depression, but it's often so much more than that. Next up, Arrival. Denis Villeneuve's career cannot be neatly subdivided, as the director has progressed from feature to feature, gathering up elements along the way, like larger budgets and more well-known casts, while blending the kind of dramatic elements that he used in the likes of Polytechnique and Incendies with the action and set pieces of his later films. But in terms of this gradient, Villeneuve's first proper science fiction feature, Arrival, does offer something of a midpoint, sitting at an intersection in his career where he was going big but still kept things personal, courting the genre crowd and the Academy in equal measure. Arrival sees fleets of gigantic black conclave alien ships descend from the skies and hover menacingly above Earth. Rather than going instant nuclear button though, the US Army calls in linguist Louise Banks to try and defuse the situation by discovering how to communicate with these alien life forms. It looks like a blockbuster, but it plays out more like an indie flick, taking place primarily in a couple of locations and focusing on language and interpretation rather than action and warfare. And its occasionally slower pace and focus on the intricacies of the science of language are what make it so worthwhile overall, giving pretty much every other alien invasion movie a serious run for its money. Next up, Poor Things. Scottish writer and artist Alasdair Gray's novels are not an easy thing to adapt, and few have tried as a result. But if anyone could do it, it was always going to be Yorgos Lanthimos. And these days, where Yorgos Lanthimos goes, Emma Stone follows, and we all get a treat. Poor Things gave us Stone like we've never seen her before though, as Frankenstein woman Bella Baxter. With a young but rapidly adapting brain and a grown woman's body, Bella escapes the confines of her creator Dr. Godwin's laboratory with the scoundrel Duncan Wedderburn in search of freedom and physical pleasure. Traveling a weird, colourful and Willy Wonka adjacent world where every horizon is a vista, Bella discovers and becomes herself while learning about poverty, socialism and sex work. Lanthimos' quirky, absurdist style fits perfectly with Gray and Tony McInerney's script, which keeps the story moving while eschewing the consciously literary parts of the latter's work. Emma Stone and Mark Ruffalo offer career-defining turns playing opposite each other with wild abandon, and their performances are contextualized by lush, out-of-this-world visuals crafted equally by Lanthimos, DP Robbie Ryan, and the set designers. All this offers a full sensory experience into the minds of Poor Things' creators that is, as yet, unmatched in surreal modern cinema. But one movie does come close, and that's our next film, Holy Motors. Described by Leos Carax as a sci-fi film without any science, Holy Motors rails against cinematic conventions from the very beginning, opening on the director discovering a cinema full of slumbering patrons and barreling straight through into a perplexing sci-fi fantasy that provokes, stuns, and challenges. Now it's difficult to say precisely who Denis Lavant plays in Holy Motors, but he is the protagonist that we do know, a man who is driven around Paris all day in a limo, adopting the guises of different people, some seemingly real, some imaginary, for his appointments. Over the course of one day and 9 such appointments, he becomes a banker, a beggar, a sewer dweller, a motion capture actor, a dying man, an assassin, a gangster, a musician, and a father. Lavant's characters walk away from certain death and dip in and out of family lives that can't possibly be their own, and yet here they are before us, both real and not. Our protagonist ends his journey at a suburban home where his wife and child are chimpanzees, and we journey on to the Holy Motors depot, where the final scene of the film, spoilers, is the rank of limousines who guide similar players around the city in conversations with each other. Holy Motors is most likely an experimental exploration of the narrative and creative process, but the literal meaning of the plot is left up to us individually, open to interpretation and a product of what we each bring to it. Next up is a blockbuster modern classic, Star Trek 2009. A worthy successor to Gene Roddenberry's iconic property, and one that has gone unmatched in the years since. J.J. Abrams' Star Trek relaunched the big screen adventures of James T. Kirk and the USS Enterprise with modern Hollywood gloss and lots of lens flare. This time, Chris Pine boldly goes where no man has gone before as a rough and ready rookie Kirk, desperate to locate his place in Starfleet while refusing to toe the line. Finding his way aboard the Enterprise, he joins Spock in a fight against the mysterious time-traveling Romulan Nero, who seeks to destroy the United Federation of Planets as penance for untold future crimes. Now, this early incarnation of the iconic Kirk allows Pine to give his own flair to the character while honouring William Shatner's version. And the supporting characters, including Simon Pegg as Scotty and Zoe Saldana as Uhura, enjoy the opportunity to do the same. What results is a tight, exciting, spectacular Star Trek adventure that instantly finds its footing and goes on to surprise us throughout, remaining reverential but clearly establishing its own polished and gargantuan style, away from the cheesy costumes and cardboard sets of yore that we all know and love. Next up, The Endless. Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead have built their career in science fiction horror, frequently weaving in other genre elements but never forgetting their roots. Their films are a deeply collaborative process, with Benson as writer, Moorhead as cinematographer, and the pair of them directing. But with The Endless, they went one step further by starring as the main characters as well, and this extra level of control helped make arguably their magnum opus. A bona fide future cult classic, The Endless brings brothers Justin and Aaron Smith back to Camp Arcadia, the UFO death cult in the woods that they escaped years earlier. A mysterious video cassette lures them in, promising an impending ascension and a sinister new step in the cult's game plan. However, when they arrive, they discover nothing at all has changed. The camp itself looks the same and the people haven't aged a day. And it's got everything to do with a mysterious entity lingering above the woods. It turns out the entity can create time loops, trapping people in whatever span of time it chooses, and ending, then resetting their experiences with their own death. It's a wonderful twist on both the cult and time travel subgenres that delivers on its grand temporal concept without the need for the usual tsunami of white noise CG. Suitably understated, The Endless is presented in muted sepia tones with splashes of colour, making each effect on the road to doom all the more affecting. Next up, Minority Report. Steven Spielberg's second best sci-fi of the 21st century, we'll get to number one soon, takes Tom Cruise before he was an adrenaline junkie and uses his star power and acting chops in equal measure to deliver a tense and action-packed version of Philip K. Dick's 1956 novella, The Minority Report. Set in a future where serious crime is predicted by psychic humans known as precogs and stopped by the elite pre-crime police program before it can ever happen, Minority Report focuses on Chief John Anderton, the commanding officer of pre-crime, who runs afoul of the system. When the precogs predict the chief will kill a man that he has never met, Anderton goes on the run from agent Danny Whitwer and his team while attempting to clear his name. Rather than a run-of-the-mill action hero, Minority Report deftly offers a flawed lead, one besieged by the tragedy of his lost son, the departure of his wife, and his addiction to drugs. With elements of noir, cyberpunk, mystery, thriller, and other genres, the story is sprawling and layered, and in the hands of a less seasoned director could have been an absolute mess. As it stands though, Spielberg manages the material with grace, elegance, and the dramatic visual storytelling that we expect from him, and the relative brevity of Dick's novella allowed writers Scott Frank and John Cohen to flesh the film out into something gripping, but with that signature feel-good Spielberg ending. Next up, Moon. Duncan Jones's Moon pays homage to the history of science fiction while creating something new. Sam Rockwell here plays Sam Bell, a miner on the dark side of the moon who lives a solitary existence, waiting for his work cycle to end so he can get back to Earth and see his family again. But just like any hard-boiled cop on the last case of his career, there's no way he's getting out of this one in one piece. So, Sam uncovers a unit full of his doppelgangers on the base where he lives, ready to replace him in the very likely event of his death. Thus, he's thrust into action, seeking a way to outlive his limited lifespan, break cycle, and get home. A wry commentary on capitalism filtered through science fiction, Moon wraps up a compelling story with grounded, believable characters into a nifty 97 runtime package. The retro aesthetic no doubt stemmed from budget constraints, but it works perfectly well for the material. It's one that doesn't get talked about too much now, but it's still worth your time. A small, satisfying indie flick, Moon still feels fresh thanks to its charismatic lead, smart writing, and central mystery. And hey, it beat Bong Joon-ho's Mickey 17 to the punch by over a decade and a half. Pretty impressive. Speaking of underseen gems, next we have Coherence. Despite having been with us for 12 years now, James Ward Burkett's micro-budget feature, seriously micro-budget, this was made for only $50,000, has still not enjoyed the airing that it deserves, despite being widely regarded as an outstanding contribution to the sci-fi genre. The setup is simple. A group of 8 friends attend a dinner party on the night of Miller's Comet, where they laugh, tease, flirt, and argue before the power then goes out. Everyone takes a coloured glow stick and things immediately ratchet up a notch as they investigate one of the houses on their block that still has its lights on. Inside this house though is another group of 8 revelers, or the same group but from another reality. And this is where the fun begins, as they discover more houses from other versions of reality, each occupied by themselves, and their members converge and clash, losing their points of origin and sabotaging each other in a quest to be the one remaining reality when the comet has gone. Coherence takes a dinner table drama and transports it across dimensions, using the character flaws and quirks of everyone involved with the cosmic level event to build a tense and unrelenting narrative. Burkett's script packs a punch in every scene, keeping us on our toes as the strangeness expands and the established rules go out the window. And it looks, sounds, and is acted like a production with quite literally 100 times the budget. Next up, Dredd. With Pete Travis behind the lens, Alex Garland again on the pen, and Karl Urban locked up tight under that iconic helmet, Dredd arrived in 2012, taking us forward to the year 2080, where the Earth is now comprised of sweaty, steamy, overpopulated megacities with state-of-nature wastelands in between. The only law is the judges, a policing force who judge, sentence, and then execute criminals at their pleasure. Urban is the titular Dredd, a seasoned judge tasked with clearing out a slum tenement and assassinating the drug lord at its peak, Mama. Along for the ride is rookie Judge Anderson, whose psychic abilities throw something helpful, new, and interesting into the mix in what is essentially the Raid on steroids. The visuals are crisp, the kills are bloody, and the humor is wry as hell. A nigh perfect cinematic adaptation of the 2000 AD source material, which nails the tone and feel of Judge Dredd while bringing his world into a mesmerizing third dimension, Dredd has sadly yet to be followed up with a sequel 13 years later, mainly thanks to poor attendance in cinemas, and this is still a crime. And releasing just a year later, we have Snowpiercer. Seamlessly adapted from the original French graphic novel, Bong Joon-ho's Snowpiercer touches down on the titular train, a self-sustaining circumnavigational train that batters across the face of a wintry Earth, keeping the last vestiges of humanity alive. On board, things are not a cushy socialist paradise where everyone gets to work together for the greater good though, but a strictly divided system, running from the rich and spacious forward carriages to the cramped, poverty-stricken conditions in the rear. Chris Evans is Curtis Everett, a survivor from the wrong end of the train who leads his fellow passengers in revolt against the upper classes, battling forward through carriage after carriage to take control of the engine and overthrow the tyrannical Wilford. Bong Joon-ho's English language debut manages to keep most of the themes of the graphic novel intact, especially its focus on the impact of man-made climate change, but expands the focus to look more at social class. Due to a conflict of opinion between Bong Joon-ho and Harvey Weinstein though, Snowpiercer was held up for release in the West, and after switching distributors and going through hell, it finally got a release, but never quite the one that this 21st century 1984 actually deserved. And a year after that, we got our next movie, Ex Machina. Yet another Alex Garland joint. What can I say? The man gets himself about in this genre and does pretty well. Ex Machina is what you would get if you took the first scene of Blade Runner, mixed in a big old helping of her, and then capped it off with a few shots of Westworld. In this film, Caleb Smith wins an invite to his boss, wacko tech CEO Nathan Bateman's private underground space. Here, he gets the opportunity to meet the big guy's alluring android Ava, whose AI has been developed to a near-human spec, and on whom Caleb is tasked with administering a series of ongoing face-to-face tests to see if she can really pass for a person. What Caleb doesn't realize though is that he's the one being tested by Nathan, who has brought the two of them together to see if Ava will seek escape and if she is capable of manipulating Caleb's emotions to do so. And yet there is another further layer to proceedings as well, as Ava has her own agenda of her own. Ex Machina takes the Turing test and turns it into a rather sinister feature film in which every conversation and connection is a test, challenging us to engage with every twist and turn, to keenly observe every single interaction and decide for ourselves what constitutes consciousness. Next, we have Timecrimes. This low-budget Spanish-language sci-fi horror may not have made a big splash at the time of its release, taking only around a fifth of its budget at the box office, but in the years since it has earned its status as a modern cult classic. This indie time travel flick follows Hector, a man who just wants to live a quiet life with his wife in their home in the Spanish countryside. However, when he spots a woman stripping off in the woods, he can't help but investigate, and is then drawn into a fatal game of cat and mouse with a bandaged man who he tries to combat repeatedly using a time machine. Like Predestination, Timecrimes deals in the consequences of a single fixed timeline that can't be changed no matter how many times you go back, because everything that you're going to do, you have already done. Which is something Hector finds out as he makes error after error, spurred on by the blunders of his future selves. Despite the lofty context of time travel, the director uses a cold, realistic palette and keeps the action grounded. No space lasers, no neons, no explosive set pieces, just a bloke, his mistakes, and his consciousness. Next we have a movie that is all too relevant in the current year, Her. Lost in Translation and Her. Two movies about the end of the same marriage, but only one of them science fiction, and it is a doozy. Why Sofia Coppola was basking in the praise she rightfully deserved for her moody alt-romance back in 2003 with Lost in Translation, Spike Jonze was biding his time, waiting a whole decade to unleash the best sci-fi romance arguably ever made, and his solo screenwriting debut to boot. Her stars Joaquin Phoenix as Theodore Twombly, a gentle, reclusive man who, in the wake of a failed relationship, finds himself falling in love with his operating system. She's got a lot more going on for her than the latest Linux though, with an AI core, the voice of Scarlett Johansson, and the very human name Samantha. Hey, one might be forgiven to think that she was made to be fallen in love with to begin with. Well, yeah. In this flick, Jones places us in an ever more recognizable near future with a story that puts AI to use in turning the tragic and profoundly human plight of its protagonist into a conundrum on the meaning and limits of personal connection and the over-reliance of technology. Samantha helps Theo grow, yes, but ultimately he must face reality that, for all intents and purposes, she's not real and he needs to rejoin the world. And as if that, the magnificent lead performances and the soft, artful cinematography weren't enough, wait for the final sequence when, true to Jones's absurdist leanings, we get one final bitter pill to swallow. Jumping back into animation next for Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. With most Marvel content designed by studio executives and financiers to fit into a 35-film 10-year plan with its aesthetic, tone, and characters all cut from the same template, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse came out of nowhere. And this is in no small part because everyone involved, including many creative names you probably will recognize, all had the same vision: to create a new style and to trust its major players. Into the Spider-Verse gives us our first cinematic outing with Miles Morales and sidesteps the tired Peter Parker origin, diving instead into a fresh mythos. Miles is a high schooler with a cop father and a crook for an uncle, whose brush with a radioactive spider gives him the classic set of powers, plus a few new ones. However, while Miles is discovering his new abilities, he faces his first big challenge, as other Spideys, including Peter Parker, Spider-Gwen, and an assortment of weird fringe Spider people, including Nick Cage's Spider-Man Noir, end up joining him on an effort to save the multiverse. The script is familiar yet inventive, offering a plethora of new sci-fi elements and alternate characters that gel well with the world we know. The soundtrack is an absolute banger and the animation style is just groundbreaking, blending computer graphics with hand-drawn comic book techniques for a vibrant, kinetic appearance that pays more than lip service to the source material. We're going back even further with our next entry, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Douglas Adams is an iconic name in British science fiction, and while adapting his iconic Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy book for the big screen was never gonna be an easy task, the key to getting it right was to keep it looking and feeling decidedly British. And this is precisely what Garth Jennings managed in 2005, leaning into his and the book's origins and letting the manners, sarcasm, and irony all speak for themselves. With the Earth set for demolition to make way for a hyperspace bypass by the immeasurably dull administrative class alien race, the Vorgons, everyman Arthur Dent is caught up in a whirlwind adventure that takes him, his dressing gown, and his insatiable thirst for a good cup of tea into outer space. Hitchhiking across the galaxy, Arthur encounters a squad of misfits that includes in their number Marvin, the depressed android, planet builder Slartibartfast, and the two-headed, two-faced president of the galaxy, Zaphod Beeblebrox, played by Sam Rockwell. The casting is immaculate. Jennings and his editor Niven Howie know precisely how to time a gag, and the extensive use of practical effects is admirable, especially at a time when CGI smashfests were all the rage. All in all, Hitchhiker's Guide is a truly essential British sci-fi flick in which the delightfully absurdist tone of the book seeps through in every scene. Switching to something distinctly American though, next up we have Donnie Darko. The film that writer-director Richard Kelly has been chasing his entire career, Donnie Darko sends us back to the 1980s, where the appropriately named Donnie Darko sleepwalks through suburbia, accidentally avoiding the instant death sentence of a jet engine crashing through his bedroom ceiling, and inadvertently setting off a chain of events that will usher in the end of the world. For 28 days, 6 hours, 42 minutes, and 12 seconds, we chart Donnie's awkward, uncomfortable, and confrontational teen life as he faces unexpected deaths, interdimensional vortices, and Frank the Rabbit, a possibly imaginary friend in a messed up rabbit costume. Of course, his parents, his school, and his counselors all tell him this is just a part of growing up, a product of his paranoid schizophrenia, and that he just needs to knuckle down and get on with things because none of this is probably really happening. But there is more to it than that. The film's labyrinthine narrative keeps any easy answers at bay, and while many took this as their cue to dismiss it upon release with only $7.5 million taken at the box office, Donnie Darko has endured in the years since, first as a cult classic built on the back of the DVD market, and now as something of a mainstream darling. It's moody, it's melancholic, and it's definitely more than a little bit emo, which aren't usually the traits for great sci-fi, I admit, and yet it packs so much of the genre into it and demands many viewings just to get the basic plot straight that we're still unpacking its ideas today. Next up, a long-awaited sequel, Blade Runner 2049. Ridley Scott's filmography may be a perplexing mix of ups and downs, but Denis Villeneuve's, so far anyway, isn't. And perhaps that was taken into consideration when Villeneuve, a then untested talent on a film of this size, scale, and importance, was selected to helm the long-awaited Blade Runner sequel, 2049. Whatever the case, we're just lucky he was picked. 2049 takes us into the future of the past future, into the path of humanoid replicant K, a Blade Runner charged with tracking and permanently retiring other replicants. But his discovery of an improbable replicant birth brings him up against an existential crisis. Was he made or born? There are only a few people who might have had the answers that he's looking for, and the one he seeks is Blade Runner's original runner, Deckard, who is missing a child of his own. Screenwriters Hampton Fancher and Michael Green tap into the philosophical depths of Scott's original film, while rounding off the edges for a story that poses questions of its viewers, while supplying something of a satisfying conclusion to a two-story arc. Visually, DP Roger Deakins matches original cinematographer Jordan Cronenworth's aesthetic, while applying every 21st century tool at his disposal to make this one of the best-looking films of the past 25 years. And the way in which Villeneuve managed to expertly wrangle all of these different elements, plus an all-star cast and a new soundtrack away from regular collaborator Johan Johansson into a unified whole, just leaves no doubts why he was given the reins for Dune. But it's a bit too early to get to that yet, because next we have Redline. Redline takes us years into the future, when the galaxy is fizzing with alien life, where dirty deals are done around every corner, and the most popular sport is racing. Rockabilly human Sweet JP enters the biggest, craziest race in the galaxy, the Redline. illegally held this year on Robo-World. And as if entering the most dangerous race in the galaxy wasn't enough, Robo-World's militant cyborgs threaten to hang anyone involved with the race if they are caught. The plot is even more batshit than it sounds, featuring a what's what of anime tropes and narrative turns splashed liberally across 102 minutes of runtime. So there's never even a chance to catch your breath. Plus, the pulsating electronic score from James Shimoji is perfectly choreographed for each race, story beat, and character moment, grounding the feel of an epic intergalactic contest. Redline has a ridiculously elaborate and nigh on unrepeatable production process as well, with 100,000 frames hand-drawn across a 7-year period, producing epic levels and layers of detail that other anime sci-fi features simply cannot match. The scope of design for every single frame is just flabbergasting, providing a trippy and breathtaking visual experience of blood, fire, electricity, and carnage which few live-action sci-fi movies can hold a candle to. Getting back to the personal dramas though, next up we have Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Part rom-com, part hallucinatory science fiction experience, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind melds Michel Gondry's aesthetic sensibilities and love of dream imagery with Charlie Kaufman's complex and habitually tricksy writing. In it, we're invited into Joel Barish's life at totally the wrong time, as he has just lost the true love of his life, Kate Winslet's Clementine, and is wallowing in his despair. To add insult to injury, he discovers that she has had her memories of him wiped completely, meaning that even if they did come face to face, she would no longer know who he was. As any loser in love would do then, Joel opts to undergo the same treatment just out of spite, only to then decide halfway through that he doesn't actually want to forget Clementine and will do anything he can to hold on. What follows is a surreal journey through Joel's memories, where his love blossoms and falls apart while he tries to hide Clementine in the corners of his mind, where he hopes the procedure can't find her. And this, overall, is the film that proves that Jim Carrey is just so much more than a comic, with him and Winslet selling themselves as the oddball couple and demonstrating a profound magnetism. The sci-fi mind-wiping tech is interesting, but the way Gondry uses it to break, bend, and bleed his scenes is where it really comes into its own. And few people, Christopher Nolan included, have made dreams and memories look this convincing. But speaking of Christopher Nolan, next up we have Interstellar. Cognizant of the challenges facing humanity today, Christopher Nolan positioned Interstellar both as an exploration of what is waiting out there for us, both in the future and the skies, and also a damning indictment of what we're doing now to Earth. The year is 2067 and the Earth is on its last legs. Global warming has brought on a worldwide crop blight, and humanity is scrambling for alternatives, sending astronauts into the furthest reaches of the galaxy looking for another habitable planet to colonize. NASA physicist Professor Brand recruits former pilot Joseph Cooper to lead such a mission, relying on him as one of the last remaining hopes for humanity's survival. Anne Hathaway in tow as Professor Brand's daughter and NASA scientist Dr. Amelia Brand, Coop slingshots through a wormhole and leads towards 3 separate planets that have been identified as potentially being livable. But they hadn't reckoned on the unpredictable forces of space facing extreme time dilation and black hole physics. While not as far-flung as Inception perhaps, Interstellar is all the more impressive for its realism, presenting a believable near future with rich, breathtaking visuals that mark a major leap forward in the presentation of outer space on film, comparable to the change that Stanley Kubrick brought with 2001: A Space Odyssey. And Nolan's rendering of Coop caught in a tesseract, essentially a 4th-dimensional space, is deeply impressive as well and wholly unique, challenging us once again to not just passively observe, but to think deeply about this experience. And next up, I promised I would get there, it's Dune Part 2. For a director who has been working since the 90s to make his best film in 2024 is quite a feat, but that is what Denis Villeneuve managed to do with Dune Part 2. After being entrusted with the cursed franchise, quite frankly, by Legendary Pictures, Villeneuve managed to pull a totally solid Dune film together in 2021, which nailed the casting, aesthetics, and lore, while condensing hundreds of pages of detail from Frank Herbert's original novel into something that felt not nearly as long as it could have been. But the true success of this enterprise would be measured from the second film, Dune Part 2, where the director then had to yank all of the threads that he wove in that first picture together and go out with a bang. And no prizes for guessing that, yeah, he managed it. Dune Part 2 sees Paul Atreides embrace his destiny as heir of House Atreides and the prophesized messiah of the Fremen, climbing through the ranks while training to become a leader who is both a warrior and a psychic. The film charts every beat of his story with urgency, and the path of Paul's ascension as he saves and then claims the desert planet of Arrakis is one of the best put to screen. The visual design of the movie is just phenomenal, even dipping into experimental black and white photography and living to tell the tale. And the blend of practical sets, on-location shooting, and computer-generated elements makes it tangible, believable, and far more arresting than other sci-fi epics. We're coming back to Earth next though for Everything Everywhere All at Once. A24 are known for getting behind niche and thought-provoking films, but even after seeing the trailer for Everything Everywhere All at Once, I don't think any of us were prepared for the film that they were sending our way. Dissatisfied and overwhelmed laundry owner Evelyn Kwan Wang unwittingly finds herself at the epicenter of a multi-dimensional collision where a dimensional hopping version of her daughter Joy, known as Jobu Tupaki, crashes her world intent on destroying everything using a giant bagel. What follows is 2 hours of the bizarre as we go from reality to reality, including one with horrible little hot dog fingers, one where everyone's a rock, and one with Rakakuni, the cooking raccoon. No questions, please. The plan is to borrow powers from other Evelyns to defeat Jobu's evil. The cast is an impeccable lineup of classic talents like Michelle Yeoh and Jamie Lee Curtis, alongside forgotten faces like Ke Huy Quan. And the directors, the Daniels, amazed with their fluid approach to camera work, editing, and aesthetics that wasn't given the space to come alive fully with their only other feature, Daniel Radcliffe's underrated farting corpse comedy, Swiss Army Man. Arguably the first and last word in multiverse movie making, Everything Everywhere takes all the sci-fi and none of the explanations, choosing to rapid fire or bypass its expositional elements in favor of cramming us straight into the action and then cramming the action straight into us. And it just keeps escalating with no reality too impossible and no scenario too extreme. Next up, Ad Astra. When making Ad Astra, writer-director James Gray sought to create the most realistic depiction of space ever seen on screen. And hey, we'll be damned if he probably didn't do it. Astronaut Roy McBride is recruited to try and establish communication with his father Clifford, who went missing on a voyage with the Lemur project out to Neptune 16 years prior. Fearing that Clifford may be alive and intending to use the nuclear device on the Lemur for nefarious reasons, Spacecom sends Roy to Mars to make contact via a long-range comm system, but once out there, Roy finds that he can't go back without some answers. Ad Astra captures the grand majesty of space, often in darkness and silence, two elements weirdly underused, outside of horror anyway, in science fiction cinema, and Gray employs the lesser-spotted composer Max Richter to channel the spirit of the music from Kubrick's 2001, while also transforming data recorded from different planets and parts of space into real sounds. Every spacescape feels real, every planet and trip haunting and breathless, and yet this realism doesn't translate through the posters or the screen grabs or the footage you're seeing here. Few of the stills from the film capture just what an all-encompassing thrill it is to watch, and quite simply, Ad Astra is a movie that must be experienced to be fully understood, and which you must give your attention to entirely to fully appreciate. And if you can, well, epic doesn't quite cut it. And finally, we have another movie beginning with AI, artificial intelligence. The epitome of this quarter-century's sci-fi endeavors could be argued to be Steven Spielberg's AI, artificial intelligence. Conceived of long before the uses and abuses of real AI had taken hold, the film tells of a little boy android whose ability to love and desire to be loved drive him on a quest to become human. Abandoned by his human mother Monica, advanced humanoid Mecha, and forever child David is cast out into a cruel world whose usable surface is dwindling thanks to man-made global warming, and which is littered with sentient mechas who have been similarly abused and abandoned. Accompanied by his robotic Teddy, David searches for Pinocchio's blue fairy, who he believes will make him real and thus deserving of his mother's love. A collaboration between the late Stanley Kubrick, who conceived of the project but put it off until technology caught up, and Steven Spielberg, who went the distance and helmed the film following Kubrick's death, AI enmeshes both writer-director's narrative, character, and aesthetic intuitions, damning humanity but redeeming us through our creations. Every detail is given the utmost consideration, from the vast cityscapes right down to the animatronic puppetry that brings Teddy to life, all of which fully realizes a film that is achingly beautiful and tragic in equal measures. And while the sentimentality of AI's ending feels just pure Spielberg through and through, it's actually in fact Kubrick's own creation, providing an unexpectedly tender coda to the director's life and career. Whew, okay, if you have stuck with me for this entire list, 1, thank you so much for watching to the end, and 2, if for whatever reason you want to watch another video like this, you can head over to Whatculture or click something on the screen right now. But otherwise, I've been stood up a long time, I'm going to go watch The Substance and sit down.